Okay, we are recording. So I just want to let everybody know this is your first time experiencing Eriktology. There are 382 videos available that explain Eriktology from the beginning that start 3 years ago, and I'll put a link to it. That video is called Ask, Seek, and Knock. That's just on this channel. And there's another channel. What is it called? Mountain Air 7.
Air 7, A-I-R-E with the E after air.
Put a link to that channel, and then Eric also did some teachings on every single letter, one at a time. Looks like 2010, 2011. It used to be on a DVD series, but may be available still, but it's all right here. So a suggestion is to start from the beginning if you don't know what we're doing at all, or just sit down and learn by osmosis. And we will roll from there. Oh, yeah, let's pray. Thank you, Father, for opportunity to gather together. Bless this message and keep everything safe. Everybody safe. In whose name? Amen. So I got a question before we begin.
Sure.
In preparing for this, we're going to get into Isaiah 13. And yep. I read on it and researched it, and boy, oh boy, there's rabbis have an opinion, pastors have an opinion. But my question is Isaiah a book of prophecy for today, or is it a book of prophecy for like a long time ago?
Yes.
Yeah. So it looks like he calls out the Medes, right? And then you can find in history where the Medo-Persian army destroyed Babylon in like 532 BC. Like that legit happened. But some people may say, well, this thing already happened, so we don't have to worry about.
That's what they say. That's exactly how they do it.
Okay. So, sorry if I stepped on your teaching.
But... No, that's fine.
I will see you in an hour.
Good. Just so people know, this is a Faraday helmet, space helmet. We're talking about aliens. You might want to title this talk, Demons, Nephilim, Aliens, oh my! Kind of like the Wizard of Oz, lions, tigers, and bears, sort of thing. So that being said, we've had conversations previously where some people don't believe in demons or aliens. Nephilim, the Bible talks about those being hybrids, human, and whether they're demons or some kind of hybrid creature, human-like. The word Nephilim, Nephal, Nun, Pe, Lamed, then the Yod, Mem, Im suffix, means fallen ones. Nephal, Nun, Pe, Lamed. But there's a word that David says in Psalm 119, open my, verse 9, I believe, open my eyes, Elohim, that I may perceive the hidden wonders. And that word hidden wonders is Nephalot, Nun, Pe, Lamed, Aleph Tav, I believe is the way it's spelled. Nun, Pe, Lamed, again, is the root word, suffix being the plural, Vav Tav is the feminine suffix, Yod Mem is the masculine suffix, so Nephalim, Nephalot, same basic Nephal word. The fallen, the giants. Well, there was different varieties of giants in the land of Canaan. There was some were called the Rephaim, but the word Rapha literally means to heal or to make sick is another way to look at it, to strengthen or to weaken. There's the Anakim. Remember the fellow in Star Wars, the Darth Vader was actually named Anakim Skywalker. Anakim is the plural of the Anak of the race of giants that were living in Canaan. So there's a few varieties of those guys. And whether or not space aliens exist, what do I mean by them? Space aliens? Well, extraterrestrials, not originating, at least, on the surface of this terra firma Earth. Well, what if they live under the Earth? as I've heard some people say they do. As a matter of fact, this week in the United States Congress, they were talking about, let's just call it UFO encounters. They were disclosing or finally exposing supposedly the fact that the US military has been engaging these various UFOs for decades, literally ever since the end of World War II, at the late 1940s. So then you have that one famous incident, the crash at Roswell, New Mexico, and then they moved it to a place in Nevada, a secret base called Area 51. And from what I understand, they called it Area 51 because it was in 1951 that they moved it to that area. So my point is, my life, I was born in 54. So right after that, occasionally you'd hear stories, scary stories of, around the campfire, ghost stories of creepy things and aliens. And every once in a while, somebody would report seeing a strange spacecraft, meaning it's flying in the air, but it's not behaving as a normal aircraft of any known technology would behave. And then there's various stories developing over the years. In the 1970s, there was more talk, and then this concept of conspiracy theory, conspiracy wackos, people that wear tinfoil hats, when you know perfectly well copper as a Faraday cage is supposed to block the 5G and block them from being able to read your mind. So when you wear one of these things, you're much better protected than the simple tin or aluminum foil. I don't even know if aluminum foil would actually work. Tin, maybe. But anyway, the point is, it was during that era that people started writing books and talking about it. And I remember previous to that, if you even mentioned space aliens, it's like, what an idiot. Shut up. You're insane. Or you're worse than insane, you're just an imbecile. Well, why are they now disclosing this week in the United States Congress that there indeed has been? As a matter of fact, there's an interesting picture. Kurt, you might want to put it up on the chat, or maybe you already have. A U.S. submarine took a shot at a triangular-shaped craft camera in the periscope, and it was actually disclosed, I believe, by the captain a number of years ago. So why are they shooting at this thing? And it was going underwater, and I've seen video footage, and it's like, yeah, is it computer-generated image, CGI, or is it somebody doing some tricky editing? And it's like, well, back when they didn't have that kind of editing, now they can do anything. Nowadays, just so you know, AI can duplicate voices given only 3 seconds of somebody speaking. They can generate an entire vocabulary of a person with the exact voice print. And they can do holographic imaging, either make the person look like they're on camera or on stage. And they were developing that back in the 80s for sure. There's a group called Skunkworks, Lockheed Martin, and the guy that started that, Kelly Johnson, very famous, really genius, figuring out the aerodynamics of jets. And right at the end of World War II, he invented a few airplanes that they used there. He ran this ultra cryptic, you might say, in the shadows. They invented spy planes and other things. But then when Kelly Johnson passed on, a guy named Ben Rich took over. And back then in the 80s, he said, anything you see, we were 70 years ahead of that. And anything you can imagine humans ever inventing, we've already invented it. Now, was he just saying that, or was he serious? If he was serious, imagine whatever we see as technology brought to the forefront right now, 2023 was invented in 1950. Cell phones, computers, those things didn't exist, or at least not so we know. So what I'm saying is, there's a guy named Stephen Greer, I think his name is, and he says, listen, I know for a fact that all these supposedly UFO craft, they're of human origin. We built them. And it's like, why would we build them and then our own military try to shoot them down but can't? And it's like, that's the game. That's the game. So whether these things, these UFOs, are from outer space, or whether they're from this planet, and whether there are space aliens that come from some other dimension, celestial, extraterrestrial, beyond our scope, or whether they're all just fictitious theater where really smart people have figured out how to fool everybody else. I don't know. I don't know the shape of the earth. And I don't know whether the extraterrestrials are really beings from another planet, another galaxy, another dimension, and whether this universe as we experience it in time and space actually is a constant restriction of dimension across the universe. In other words, is everybody everywhere limited to time and space as we perceive it? In which case, I've heard people say, oh, come on, even if you're traveling the speed of light, it'll take you so long to travel from, say, the Milky Way galaxy to some other galaxy to some other galaxy, 15.8 billion years, light years away. Yeah, but what if you can go interdimensionally? Then it just doesn't matter. And I forget the guy's name. There was a guy, I remember reading about this. He noticed there's a certain kind of beetle, earth creature, with these kind of pyramid shapes in its wings. And he noticed that if he put the wings together, maybe there was a magnet, I don't remember the details, but they would levitate. Levitate beetle's wings. Well, then this fellow created a, let's just call it a vehicle, with the similar design underneath with these pyramid shapes, and it actually would hover, and he could actually move it. And I think somebody was telling me it would go 900 miles an hour, and this is many decades ago, but his hair wouldn't blow in the breeze. In other words, there was this, let's just call it a magnetic force field surrounding him that would deflect the wind. So he could move, he had the thing propelled somehow, he could move, not subject to the physics of time and space as we recognize them. How did he do that? Well, I don't know how he did that. Is it possible? Unless it's a fake story of disinformation or intentional misinformation, he might have been able to pull that off. There's evidence that there has been atomic explosions, atomic bombs going off, like in India, centuries ago. So is inventing the atomic bomb a new thing? Nobody knows. There's, you might say, cave drawings, and there's carvings from ancient Egypt and other countries showing flying craft. And then there's some hieroglyphic looking carvings showing what looks like a tank and a helicopter, maybe a submarine. In Egypt, what did they have? Nobody really knows. So for us to think too much of ourselves like we're the top of the food chain, we're the most developed technologically, and that nobody has ever or will ever keep pace with us, we don't really have a clue. So this thing that I was talking about a couple weeks ago, which said, out of all conscious minds which could contemplate existence, human or otherwise, how many actually ponder, why is this universe here? So we talked about a few months ago that book by Jim Holt, Why Does the World Exist? And he was leaving religion out of the equation. It was just physics and philosophy and having conversations with numerous other people as well as his own musings. And I thought it was a really interesting book. Thinking, observing, if this, then this, but why not that? If this is the way it works and so forth. And why does this world exist? Well, God made it exist. Well, no, you can't go there. If the laws of entropy are that everything's looking for the lowest expression of energy, just to everything calm down, then why do things keep developing and keep getting more complicated? Everything should be the most simple, but they're not. Just the fact we have an eyeball is a total mysterious thing because it all has to happen all at once. So you get interesting people like Kent Hovind, for example. We'll talk about this. There's a lot of things you can look up on the internet if you want that kind of intellectual navigating. For the eyeball to exist, it couldn't have evolved because everything had to be altogether functioning, working cohesively in unison together all at once in order for it to work, or else it would never work. Anyway, the point is, if you can contemplate intelligent design, well, where do you go from there? So those of us who have access to the, let's just call them the Hebrew scriptures, the Torah, that Yahuwah Elohim Zavot, Elohim of Israel, told Moshe to write, well, that's not the same as some other sacred books, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, there's other various writings elsewhere. I don't know about their credibility. I haven't read them, but I have read the Torah. And it says that it's a personal self-disclosure of the creator of the universe. Even Genesis 1:1, you read that as a narrative, and it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Only that's not exactly what it says. If you look at it in Hebrew, I heard somebody once say there are hundreds of ways to read that verse once you start looking at how the words are spelled letter by letter. What's it really saying? In, well, that's location. The beginning, that's time. So now you got time and space. Elohim, now you have this causal agent outside time and space, created Bet Resh Aleph. So he had the idea, he had the capacity, and he had in his realm some location within that realm that he could make this location. So he's outside of time and space, putting into the constraint of time and space, heaven and earth. And if heaven is celestial and ethereal, earth being of matter, which is literally like the bet is of substance, Aleph is of idea. We've talked about that a few times. So who is this Elohim? Well, he gave us the seventh day. That first week of creation, starting to talk about it in Genesis chapter 2, the seventh day was very particularly, well, when it says he stopped all his work, he made the seventh day. That was a type of work. He instituted the seventh day as a Shabbat. And he said that this would be the sign, if you go to Exodus 20, where the 10 Commandments were, and then if you read in Deuteronomy, was it Deuteronomy 5, where it talks about the 10 Commandments again, it talks about the Sabbath day a little differently than in Exodus 20. But what he says is, this is a sign throughout all your generations forever for Israel, a sign that we're his people and that he's our Elohim. Now, why would he do that? Well, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in a creator, if you have some other sort of evolutionary postulation of why we exist, or if you have some other religious affiliation, you can make up any stories you want. But to take as a given the Hebrew scriptures, starting with Genesis, and say, I'm going to take this as truth, and I'm going to take this as a personal self-disclosure, which is this essence of Aleph, Aleph as a prefix letter means I am or I will. So it's identity and intent. I'm doing this. I'm going to do this. This is what I'm about. And so for the seventh letter to be Zion, which means to be cut off, it's a weapon. It's to be made distinctive, like wearing a certain hat. Oh, that sets you apart. That's Zioning. So the crown of thorns placed on Yahusha's head, he was Zioned. For some religious person or well, everybody, wearing funny hats is what distinguishes what class of person you are. All through history, it's interesting to look back through old paintings and see especially with religious people and military people, but the silly different hats they would wear. And like in war, like World War I, the Germans had a spike sticking up on top, and they had different, the British had it flared out. And besides the functional to keep shrapnel or covering your ears so you don't hear the explosions, if you see a silhouette in the smoke or in the haze or a night with light, you'll know by the silhouette exactly what team you're on. So military people would dress differently so you can instantly tell who's on your side. So Yahuwah built this Sabbath day to instantly know who's on your side or if we're on his side. And he also implemented food laws. I was talking to a fellow yesterday, and he was saying how when cultures mix and amalgamate and blend together, taken into captivity or traveling, the one way you can make sure that you keep your culture with integrity, distinctive from the others, by food laws. Well, so we have both the Sabbath day and food laws, and we have the Moedim. And so Yahweh's Avot, the Elohim of Israel, built that into the identity of his people Israel. The Sabbath day, the Moedim, and food restrictions. Regardless of any other reason, such, I met a guy yesterday, he said his name was Sabati. Sabati, it's like my Sabbath, and he says, yes, well, it actually comes from a Turkish word that means to be strengthened and, full of vigorous health. Well, why were we given the Sabbath day? Because it's to strengthen us and give us vigorous health. And so it's interesting to see that word, his name Sabati, Greek, Greek occasion, Turkish word, but it doesn't mean Sabbath. It doesn't mean Sabbath rest. But the effect of it is because of the Sabbath rest. I can see that if I know how the language works. Just an interesting thing to observe. So besides the fact that Yahuwah said to Israel, eat these things and don't eat those things, for health, for strength, for sanity, don't work on the seventh day. Learn how to read. He gave his people certain instructions. We've talked before that the one most often repeated commandment in the entire scripture was fear not, al tira, but it's also lo tira. So regarding these space aliens, or whether they're demons or some hybrid Nephilim, yeah, but they're big, they're weird, they're scary, and we have reason to be afraid. He said, don't be afraid. What's the reason? They're not one of us. Just the other day, I was working out here on my walking down a sidewalk, and a hornet, wham, hit me. I think it was going right for the eye, hit me there, and it's like, what the heck? That guy hit me on purpose. He attacked me on purpose. Could have stung worse than he did, but my whole eye swelled up, and it's like, that's like those Nephilim and space aliens and demons. I didn't do anything to them, and they're coming after us. Reason to be disturbed, reason to have, well, fear. Those hornets, man, they can, bald-faced hornets, they can get you if they want. Anyway, what I'm saying is this idea of being wary of or afraid or protect yourself, is with good reason. So this thing in Isaiah 13, all of a sudden, is this weird setup. So we're going to go through this a little bit here. So it says a prophecy concerning Babylonia, which Isaiah, son of Amos, envisioned. Concerning Babylonia. Well, what it actually says is Mem Shin Aleph, Massa. Hey, wait a minute. Wasn't it Jeremiah 23? It says people were saying, anybody got a Massa? Anybody got a Massa, Yahweh? And Yahweh says, if anybody ever says that word again, wham, to the moon. Jackie Gleason thing. He said, you're going to be cut off, you and your family, and that's it. I better not hear this word ever again. You should instead say, what did Yahweh say? What did he articulate? But anybody asks for a Massa, Yahweh, big trouble. Well, here this is a Massa. Anyway, the word Massa is translated oracle, as it were a divine vision or a word. But see, Nun Shin Aleph and Mem Shin Aleph, Mem and Nun, if you know what those letters mean, Mem is the place or the object, Nun is the action, but Nun Shin Aleph, like the word NASA, NASA, the American Space Agency, it means to pick up and transport stuff. So the Massa is something picked up and carried, or otherwise translated burden, or it's like Isaiah was given this vision, and it's like, oh no, so this burden which he needs to talk about. And then the word is Babel. It doesn't say Babylonia, that's the way it's translated. It says Bet Lamed. So, studying the spelling of words. Well, Bet means gateway or entrance. Het Bet, Chababa, is your bosom. Bet Lamed, like Nabal, means fool. Bet Lamed is blah, nothing, to just be worthless. So Babel, Bet Lamed, literally could be read as the gateway to nothingness, or the gateway to everything being just confused and unusable. Remember, it was the Tower of Babel, Bet Lamed. Everybody had one language, and they started to build this tower unto the heavens. Nimrod wanted to apparently go up on top, get up there real high, and shoot a arrow into the face of Elohim. About 500 years after the flood, something like that. But anyway, that's where the Elohim came down and saw what the people were doing, and it's like, I told you guys to spread out over the face of the earth, and they wouldn't. They wanted to make a tower and stay right there, and he changed all the languages, and then people spread out and associated with each other according to their languages. So once he confused all the languages at the Tower of Babel, you could have been standing there and not understood anybody, and all of a sudden, oh, hey, there's a person over there, I understand the language. Well, we should go together. We should be of one group. And then these people spread out across the face of the earth, approximately 2500 BC. So I could read this. This is a burden or an oracle or a word of revelation concerning this gateway to worthlessness, Babel. Now, is it that city, Babylon? Probably. Kurt was just saying, is this talking about ancient prophecy or future? Well, yes, both. Let's suggest it's both. Now, I say let's suggest it's both because I've heard it preached from the pulpit that once a prophecy is fulfilled, it's done. It's done. Move on to something else. We can read the prophecy. We know historically it happened. It's done. And that there's no demand, no obligation, no suggestion that Elohim is going to use that as a model by which to make something else happen. It's done. But then I've heard exactly the opposite, that everything he gave us is a fractal, as it were, a pattern, a model of other things happening. And whether it's again and again, or numerous times, or one other time, it's sometime in our future. So again, you can think of it however you want. If I say this is the oracle of the gateway to nothingness, well, gosh, isn't this present AI business kind of the gateway to nothingness? Man, the stuff they're able to do with these computers, the stuff they're coming up with. Which Isaiah, interesting thing, the word Yeshayahu, Yod Shin Ayin, Yod He Vav. Well, Yod Shin Ayin, that's like Yahusha, or the Yashu. There's no Vav between the Shin and the Ayin, but it means save, help, redeem, deliver. So Yeshayahu could be read as he saves, and then Yahu, he saves Yahu. Yahu doesn't need to be saved. Well, so this Hebrew concept of Yahu is the one who saves. Well, that's kind of like Yeshua's name, Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, same letters, different order. Anyway, what I'm saying is that if you just read the word Isaiah, you'd never know it's the same letters and the word is Yahushua. Just bring that to your attention. Son of Emetz, Aleph Mem Vav Zadi. Well, we could look in the dictionary. So this is one thing to do, is to say, is it the son of Aleph Mem Zadi? So if the Vav can be taken out or put in, you could look at Aleph Mem Zadi and say that's the root of it. It means to be strong, performed with difficulty, made an effort, endeavored, determined. Emetz, similar to the word ayin zadi, it means to close the eyes, which is actually the word for tree. Reddish, gray, strong, strength, might, courage, boldness. Aleph Mem Zadi, Aleph Hey is invention. Aleph Mem Zadi, Hey, courage. A raw piece of meat. Aleph Mem Zadi, Hey. Well, what do you do with all that? Is that just his father's name? Yeah, but there's something else about Isaiah, or what's going on here. Just to say, that's part of the reading. Now, so here, let's look at this. If we say, well, this is a prophecy concerning Media Persia attacking Babylon. Well, it doesn't say that. This says this is an oracle bird and vision regarding this gateway to confusing, I don't know what the heck is going on. And the salvation, Ben, son of, take courage. Well, how do you take courage in the face of this? Got your helmet on? Was it the helmet of truth? Isn't that something in the New Testament about that? Anyway, picture if you were going to stage this as a film. How would you direct? How would you set up the scene? Upon on the high mountain, hoist a banner. Okay, so you got to go to a high mountain. Is that a hill in the midst of farmlands? Perhaps. Is it like the highest mountain, like going up to Mount Hood here in Portland, or Mount Whitney, or just go up to the highest place anywhere around, hoist a banner. So the word nun samic is banner. That's the word used here. Shin Aleph Vav, that's to lift up, like to lift up and carry, which is the same derivative word as the oracle, Mem Shin Ayin. This is Shin Ayin Vav. So Yahuwah said in the Ten Commandments, it says, don't lift up his name unto vanity. Well, that's the same word as Shin Aleph and Shin Vav Aleph. So this Babel is a type of vanity, and this is lifting up some type of vanity. And this then as a similar lifting up a nun samic. Well, this whole idea of the logo of the Eriktology to be the nun samic is because in the Psalms, we talked about this, it says, is given a banner to be lifted up, a nun samic to be nun vav samic, samit, I think is the word, on account of the truth, But that word truth is kuf shin tet, and it literally means to decorate like fletchings on an arrow so that you can shoot straight. Well, see, to shoot straight with the truth is the opposite of babble. Babble is this confused bewilderment of going all different places, as directly opposed to this straight trajectory of truth, which is koshet. And the whole idea of the Nun Samik is to be able to read the truth in the letters. That the Samik is the engineered structure, like a tree skeleton, branches and trunk, and then the meaning of the letters, or this inflamed, this lit menorah. So if a menorah shape, like the Samik, the lit menorah would be a Nun Samik. Upon the high mountain, hoist a banner. But see, the word for mountain is hey resh. There's another word that if we get to, we can look at it, called on the mountain, which is bet hey resh, which literally means to explain or to clarify or make clear. So the mountain is, hey resh also means to be pregnant. So if you look at somebody and say, hey, she's obviously with child there. So hey resh is to make something evident, that something that was otherwise not so clear, to make it clear. And he said, raise up this Nun Samik. Then he says, raise a voice to them. Well, you're calling out, says raise a voice, calling out to who? Wave a hand. Let them come to the doors of the nobles. So I'm just reading the English here. Well, if I live on the West Coast, I'd say, if I go up into a high mountain, I'd say the doors of the nobles in Washington, D.C. is about 3,000 miles east. Don't they know that? Whoever these guys are, these guys. Who are you waving, lifting up a banner, catching their attention? And then it says, verse 3, I have commanded. So this is Elohim speaking. I have commanded my dedicated ones. That's the word kadosh, kodoshim. I have also summoned my warriors to execute my wrath, to be exuberant over my grandeur. There's another translation that says that Yahuwah is bringing in his proudly exulting ones who are exuberant over his grandeur. It's phrased differently, so it's using the same words, but okay, so these are not necessarily evil demons, but on the other hand, Yahweh said that Nebuchadnezzar was his drawn sword. A few verses earlier in Isaiah, it talks about Assyria being, one place it refers to them as being pirates or piratzim. I think it was Peyod Resh Zadi, pirates. It means they break things, they kill people, they have no regard of anything being nice or good or worth saving. They just tear everything apart. He calls those people in to tear apart his people. But then he makes them pay ultimately. Well, so I could read these guys and saying, wait a minute, he says, I have summoned my warriors to execute my wrath. So are these guys good guys or bad guys? Well, they belong to Yahweh, but he's Yahweh's avot. Avot is a military term. Zadi bet Aleph Vav Tav. The Vav Tav is the plural suffix. Zadi bet Aleph means army, or to amass, or to multiply the number of, like, you have a few farmers, they're just a few farmers, but then you get more and more. Now you have an army, a mob. That's the meaning of the word zavot. I have commanded my dedicated ones, verse 3. Ani, Aleph Nun Yod, I myself, Zadi Vav Yod Tav Yod. Well, Zadi Vav is the word command. So the word Zion, Zadi Yod Vav Nun, if Zadi Vav is a command, my command would be Zadi Vav Yod. But Zadi Yod is kind of like in the position of Zi, like Tzitzi, catching attention, fringes, wing spread, noise, shout. I have Lamed Mem Kuf Dalet Shin Yod to my Kadoshi, those who are my Kadoshi. And Gam, Gimel Mem, also Kufresh Aleph Tav Yod. Well, Kufresh Aleph is to call or learning to read. Gabor, that's the mighty warrior. Lamed Aleph Pei Yod. Well, that's Aleph Pei is wrath. Aleph Pei Yod is my wrath. But Aleph Pei is also knows or to characterize. Aliz, Ayin Lamed Yod Zion Yod would be my exuberance. And then Gimel Aleph Vav Tav Yod. That's like the word Elisa, which is a girl's name, is that word for rejoicing or exuberance. And then Gimel as like the neck of the camel that stands up, or giraffe kind of concept. And then Aleph Vav Tav. So you could say to be proud or arrogant is Gimel Aleph, and to be exalted over Aleph Vav Tav, my Aleph Vav Tav. Well, the Vav Tav is this plural suffix, but I could also read this as Gimling my, that's Gimel first letter, Yod last letter, my, Aleph Vav Tav. Well, the Aleph Vav Tav is a sign or a symbol or letter of the alphabet. It's also oath and the contract of the stipulations that we've all agreed to. So he's executing the terms of his contract. The sound of commotion, verse 4, is in the mountains, like that of an enormous people. Like an enormous people. This isn't necessarily a bunch of people, but I think of machine noise, engines, the crescendo of the kingdoms of gathering nations. Well, that's like thousands and thousands of people rustling their armor. I mean, Isaiah, did he know what a machine sounded like? Maybe, but perhaps this is spaceships. Yahweh's vote is assigning officers for the Legion of War. Okay, they come from a faraway land from the end of the heaven. Spaceships? A faraway land. The word far away there is memreshek kuf, and it means distance, dimension, far away, highly unlikely or improbable. Kind of like the opening of Star Wars, in a land far away, long, long time ago. Yeah. Time or space beyond the scope of our recognition that we don't think is not bloody likely. Bad English accent, but that's a common phrase. I think it's Australian. Anyway, the point is Yahweh, and is that weapons of anger to devastate the entire land. Wail, verse 6, for the day of Yahweh is near. It will come like a sudden attack from the Almighty. What? Yahweh is our enemy here? He's going to come with a full-blown assault. Agents, military vehicles making a lot of noise, hundreds, maybe thousands of his angel armies or space aliens or what the heck they are. Verse 7, therefore all hands will grow weak and every human heart will melt. Even our bravest, toughest guys with the best technology we have are going to look at this and go, oh, man, we haven't got a prayer. We haven't got a chance. In fact, don't bother praying. It's the guy you're praying to is the guy coming at you. Gosh. Verse 8, they will be terrorized. The humans, aches and pains will seize them. They will be in travail like a woman in childbirth, which is, forget anything else. You're just going to sit there and scream. Each man will be astonished at his friend. Their faces are faces of flame. So that means every man just looking at his neighbor going like, oh, void of thought. You can't even wrap your mind. You can't, hey, let's do something. Let's duck and cover. You know, like when we were kids, you know, put your hands behind your neck, go into your desk so when the A-bomb goes off, then you can get up and do something. Yeah. Anyway, the faces of flames quiver. So are the muscles shot and your face just Or is your face melting like what happened in Hiroshima when the A-bomb went off? Or are the people just glowing like flame? Whatever's happening, their composure is discomfited, would be the word. Verse 9, behold, the day of Yahweh is coming, a day of cruelty, rage, and burning anger. God loves everybody. To make the land desolate, cruelty, rage, burning anger, to make the land desolate. Verse 9. What the heck? And he will annihilate its sinners from it. No, wait a minute. If we're his people, by classification, we're not sinners. We're forgiven of our sins. And we're walking in his ways of Torah. That's what makes the difference between what is sin, not doing what he said, walking in wickedness and unrighteousness. But being his people, we're supposed to be walking in mishpat and zadikah and emet and chesed. Hence, not sinners. So if he's bringing in this entire invasion fleet, and its purpose is to annihilate sinners from the earth, then I read this as saying, well, this is like Yahweh sending in the cavalry to protect us, his people. So these guys, whoever they are, if they come from the far side of the heavens, from a dimension highly unlikely, space aliens is the only classification I can think of. They're coming to rescue us from the guys that have been making life grievous. Verse 10, for the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not radiate their light. The sun will be dark when it rises. The moon will not shine forth its light. Okay, well, if you read Immanuel Velikovsky, Ages in Chaos is One, but Worlds in Collision, wrote it in approximately 1950, around the same time as the alien thing was going. I will visit evil upon the earth, and upon the wicked their iniquity. See, there's according to man's way, it's returned on his own head. And I will end the pride, that's the Gimel Aleph, of the wanton. And bring low the haughtiness of the mighty. I will make man, that would be the word anosh, Aleph Nun Vav Shin. So it's not Adam, it's not Gabor, it's not like masculine, but it's basically humanity, more valuable than rare gold. Well, if that means that so many people are going to be wiped out, that to find a human is like, oh, there's one. That's a lot of people getting killed by space aliens. I will make man more valuable than rare gold, and people more than the precious gold of Ophir. Therefore, I will make the heavens tremble, the earth will rumble from its place. That's like either a shifting of the poles or the earth on its axis, or somebody takes the pizza and bumps it and flips it over. It's like some major geographical trouble. The earth will rumble from its place at the fury of Yahweh's avot on the day of his burning wrath. Well, if you didn't read anything else and you just read this, it's like, there's that big monster God of the Old Testament again. And he's coming to just mess all of our fun, ruin all of our stuff, break all the bridges, knock down the buildings. It's like, come on. You know, like little kids go finding an ant colony and kicking it and making the ants go rebuild it all again, like sending the flood. Verse 14, they will be like a chased away deer, they the humans, and like sheep with no one to gather them. Each person will turn to his people. Remember, at the Tower of Babel, each person turned to whoever he could find that spoke like him and said, hey, we must be the same people, let's go together. And then, so we talked about that verse last week where it's like, hey, we Shema Elohim just like you, let's us walk together. So this concept of either by the language or by the custom, keeping the Sabbath day, listening to his voice. Hey, I noticed you don't eat pork and you don't eat shellfish. You know Yahweh Zephot. And each person will flee to his land. Verse 15, anyone found, like if you don't run and hide to your own place where you're supposed to be, anyone found will be pierced, and anyone who is gathered in will fall by the sword. Their babies will be sundered before their eyes, their houses will be pillaged, the women ravaged. Now, verse 17, behold, I shall arouse media against them who will not value silver, not desire gold. Okay, so now he's saying this is Media Persia he's raising up, which is basically Iran, what we now think of as Iran, and Babylon is where the country of Iraq is. So if you look in verse 17, and it says, Hineni, which says, behold, here I am, Mem Ayin Yod Resh. Well, that's the word Ayin Yod Resh, like Ayin Resh Kaf, Eric or Eriktology, is to lay something open, to make it bare, to arouse, to be of interest. Ayin Resh is to be alert and watching. So he's going to arouse the interest. Ayin Lamed Yod Hey Mem, above them, Aleph Tav hyphenated with Mem Dalet Yod, Medi. Okay, so that's Media Persia. Wait a minute, what's Mem Dalet? Well, Dalet Yod, Mem Dalet Yod suffix means my, but Dalet Yod is the word that means enough, stop, sufficient. Mem is the place where it's developing. Mem Dalet is where, remember we talked about like the word tailor-made or something that's fit to your size. Mode, M-O-D-E, made, M-A-D-E, and something that's metered. So I could say, oh, he's just talking about Media Persia here. Or I'm saying, wait a minute, this has to do with your own way coming back on your head. And if you perpetuate injustice, falsehood, criminal lying, stealing, killing, you're getting your own way back on your own head without mercy. That's mishpat. That's justice. Well, that's what he's come to do. So is this Media Persia or not? And he said, this isn't about somebody coming to steal silver and gold. This is all about your way is coming upon you, period. So if your way is truth, justice, mishpat, and tzedakah, Yahweh is going to bring that upon you. If your way is chesed, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy, then he'll bring mercy as he promised to his people. Well, this is all the people that says, God? What God? Where's your God? You think he's watching? You think he cares? You think he's going to help you? Pff, yeah, right. So we're going to do all the stuff. So all the stuff, you know what's going on? Eugenics. Verse 18, their bows will sunder young men. What's a bow? A bow is something that shoots an arrow. And an arrow is something like a straight pokey thing, you know. Will sunder young men. They will show no mercy for the fruit of the womb. Babies will be aborted, and their eyes will not have pity on children. I mean, this is verse 18 of Isaiah 13. And Babylonia, the choicest of the kingdoms. Well, you know, then there's that mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation, which some people have said looks like could be United States or Roman culture or British American. You know, is it possible to assign actual names to these places? It's the concept, the great whore of Babylon and her harlot daughters. Some people say, well, that's the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches. And it's like, I don't know. The choicest of the kingdoms, the splendor of the glory of the Chaldeans. And again, Daniel was a chief Chaldean, but the Chaldeans were known as the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the people that were the astrophysicists, you might even say, or the channelers. And it'll be like Elohim's overturning of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, this is going to be a rough time. It will not be inhabited forever, will not be settled from generation to generation. No Arab will pitch tent there, and the shepherds will not make flocks there. So he's basically saying what was the city of Babylon is going to be completely annihilated without a trace, and nobody will remember, hey, there's the ancient artifacts. Let's go rebuild it. And then from what I understand, Saddam Hussein of Iraq was going to rebuild Babylon back on the original place, and then there was a war, an event which eliminated his efforts, and so thus fulfilling this prophecy that martens will be there, birds and rodents, and their houses will be full of ferrets, owls will live there, demons will dance there. Unless that's a different translation. How do demons dance there? Cats will howl in their mansions, jackals in their palaces of delight. Her time is soon to come, her days will no longer endure. And then the beginning of chapter 14, for Yahweh will show mercy to Yaakov. He will choose Israel again and grant them rest upon their land. The proselyte will join them and the attached to the house of Jacob. The nations will take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel will possess them as slaves and maidservants upon the land of Yahweh. They will be captors over their captors, and they will rule over their oppressors. So I asked somebody years ago, did you know the Jews believe that they're going to actually be the lords of the earth and own as slaves all the other people groups? Never heard of that. Well, that's where it's from, Isaiah 14. So back in the days before there was chapters and verses, this was all just a continuum of reading. So when Yahuwah takes out the confusion, Babel, bringing people what is their mishpat balanced scales of what they're due because of the way they've been, that's Madi, Mebdal, Yod, at that same time that the humans, or the majority of humans on the face of the earth, are going to be annihilated, he's going to, at that time, show chesed and rachem to Jacob. So verse 1 there, rachem, reshet mem, that's the word for mercy or compassion. As a word, rachem also means womb, so it's like a pregnant woman tending her baby. Yeah, but it's just talking about previously that those people will have no mercy upon the pregnant, no mercy upon the children, the babies. Well, we have to look, so we live in America here, and or I do, and I have to look at the modern culture of what's going on, you know, so there's let's just say there's certain trafficking situations going on. People have been talking about that, and if you mention it, you get in trouble, you get kicked off the internet, so we can't talk about that. But the point is, there's a lot of people that have been very unkind and very unjust. And this seems to be talking about the end of their reign. So we talked last week, 5 minutes, we talked last week about certain, the word was mem kufav mem, a place of standing, a time, an era, an age, where Elohim has allowed certain people to operate, and he's even allowed the wicked to operate in a certain jurisdiction for a time and for a reason. Well, what's the reason? The reason is always because Israel's being stupid. So if we go back and which we're going to do in the second hour here, we're going to go look at some stuff in Isaiah 8. The point is, what are we supposed to be doing, and what are we supposed to be thinking? Is there demons and aliens and Nephilim? Let's suggest there are. Well, how do we fight against them? What kind of technology weapons do we need? Well, it's not about that. They're allowed to conduct a cleansing. They're allowed to punish Israel until Israel realizes, hey, why don't I just do what Yahweh said? And then we can come back. That's the point. There's a word. I wonder what people think this word means. Think about this. Lamed mem kuf dalet shin. It's actually in Isaiah 8, verse 14. first, there's two words here. We're going to get to this next hour, but what it says is Vav Hey Yod Hey. Now, Hey Yod Hey is the verb to exist. Yod Hey Vav Hey means he will cause to exist, right? That's Yahuwah. Aleph Hey Yod Hey means I am, or I will be. I'm the one who's projecting this Hey Yod Hey thing that exists. But this word here in verse 14 of Isaiah 8 is Vav Hey Yod Hey. So what's that Vav mean? Vav typically is translated and, typically. But it's a connector. It can mean but, it could mean if, when, although, perhaps, and it can also change the past to the present or the present to the future. It's something which is this connecting thing. And then the second word is Lamed Mem Kuf Dalet Shin. Now the word Kuf Dalet Shin is Kadosh, which means betrothed, holy, sacred, devoted, assigned, purified. It's what you'd call also a temple prostitute, meaning if there's a man or a woman who you might say works for the temple, and their life is all about servicing those worshipers who come to the temple. So they can't just go to the local bar and go home with anybody that they want, because their job is to be dedicated to only servicing the adherents, the worshipers of that temple. Well, that's the same word as Kuf Dalet Shin. So the word kadosh doesn't necessarily mean sacred unto Yahweh. If you say kadosh la Yahweh, oh, now you're sacred unto Yahweh. But you have to say, no, it means set apart, betrothed, kept on reserve exclusively for what? Well, it doesn't say for what here. Well, it does in a few minutes, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. But what's this prefix Lamed Mem Kuf Dalet Shin? Lamed means appearing as, or remember Ani Ladodi Vedodi Li. Li means mine, Lamed Yod. Lamed means unto, regarding, possessed by, or written by, or it's concerning that which. And then Mem is a prefix. Lamed Mem Kuf Dalet Shin. Well, Mem means the place of, the instrument of, the tool of, but Mem is also the prefix letter that means away from, not. It means where you used to be, but you're not anymore. So Mem as a prefix can mean the opposite. So is this verse 14 saying it appears as kadosh, but it's not kadosh? It's the opposite of kadosh. Well, what do you do with that word? We'll get to that in a minute. But what I'm saying here is that in the opposite way, we can look at Isaiah 13 and say, there's these guys that look like they're villains. They look like they're evil space aliens, but they're Yahuwah's personal agents of cleaning up the earth to remove the sinners from the earth. So humans aren't going to fight against these guys. In fact, you'll be stunned and unable to do anything until they annihilate you. So what did he give us? Time for a break.